Hello guys, my name is Desmond and I welcome you to my YouTube channel. Guys, if you're watching this video from any of my platforms, it could be TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, or whatever other social media it could be, just know that we've done a full lesson for this question on our YouTube channel. So on a daily basis up until you're done with your exams, I'll be doing live lessons, actually full live lessons. That's why I'll be answering questions from the start of the question up until the end. But otherwise, what matters the most is to let you know that this was done in full on my YouTube channel. You can just search for Solving Exam Papers under playlist free online live lessons. That's when you'll be able to access a full lesson. And again, if you're watching this live on my YouTube channel and the quality is a bit poor, you can just click somewhere. If you just click on the screen of your either tablet or mobile, at the top right corner there should be three dots where you can just click there, click on quality, then down there at the bottom there should be advanced. If you click there and choose, it should be 480p the maximum, you can just click there, then it will be able to adjust the quality so that you are able to see the text on the screen. So you should be able to read all of that on your mobile without any hassle. So guys, for today's lesson, it's going to be very much interesting, because I don't just want to answer or show you how you answer the questions, but again, I want to make sure that I give all the necessary tips that you need in order for you to be able to solve any related question. It could be a question for grade 10, questions for grade 11, questions for grade 12. And again, if you're upgrading your maths, the same tips should be useful to you. So for today's lesson, guys, it doesn't really matter if you're in grade 10, grade 11, grade 12 or you're upgrading. It's just a general lesson, but it's a question paper from one of the grades. But what matters the most is that I just want you to see how you analyze the given diagram or the given graph, and again be able to interpret the given statement in relation to the given sketch or diagram. So, ladies and gentlemen, when you're given a question similar to this, the first thing that you do obviously is to read the given information. From there, you can just have a look at the sketch or the diagram. And as I always say, in most cases, you'll find that the given statement talks about the given sketch. And again, the given sketch, it's a reflection or it's a representation of the given statement. So whatever that you read there, it's represented in a form of sketch or in a form of diagram. Okay, so guys, we'll be starting our question at 4.2, and I'll just quickly read through the given statement. So the graphs of f of x, it's equals to 1 over 2 into x plus 5 close squared minus 8, and g of x, it's equals to 1 over 2x plus 9 over 2 are sketched below. That was the first given sentence, or the first given statement. So out of that statement, what to notice is that you've got two graphs, which is the graph of f and again the graph of g. Okay, so without you having to refer to this given sketch, you should be able to know that this is a quadratic formula, or this is a parabola. And again, you should be able to notice that the graph of g, it's a straight line. Okay, because of the format in which those two functions or graphs are written. So you should be able to know that when it's written in that way, it's a parabola, and again, when it's written in that way, it's a straight line. So You've got 3 bullets there. I'm just going to quickly read. The first one says A is the turning point of F. Okay, so A, which is a point, is the turning point of F. The second bullet, the axis of symmetry of F intersects the x-axis at E and the line G at D, where D, the x value is referred to M and the y value is referred to as N. And the last bullet says C is the y-intercept of F and G. Okay, so guys, this question paper is posted on my Telegram channel. If you want to have access to this question paper, you can just join my Telegram channel. You search for Solve Exam Papers. You'll be able to join and easily access this question paper. So this is November 2020 question paper. I've posted it there. You can just join and access the whole of this question paper. But for today's lesson, we'll only be focusing on this question because I think it's one of those interesting questions and it has a lot of information that we can actually, explore and learn a lot out of this lesson. So, guys, I've just read the given statement. So what I would like to quickly do is to try redraw that sketch so that you have an idea of how to redraw the given sketch. Remember, this sketch is drawn already, so it could be a bit confusing, but if you draw it yourself, that's when you develop a better understanding and you now have an easy way of approaching questions because you fully understand the question. So guys, I'm just going to take away my screen, although I've drawn it already. And remember, what I drew by hand, it's not to scale, it's just for ease of reference. So I'll redraw it again so that you are able to see and you're able to understand how did I draw that sketch with different marking pens. So guys, at all times, I'll say this again, at all times, you should be able to notice your axis, which is what we call a Cartesian plane. A Cartesian plane has the x-axis and the y-axis. I've said this in my previous lessons where I emphasize that graphs are drawn on a set of axes, which are 2 axes, the x-axis and the y-axis. Okay, that's why even on my sketch there, I drew a set of axes in red so that you are able to see. So guys, when you're given a sketch or a statement and you want to practice so that you just redraw the sketch with a different pen, okay, just use that different pen to draw your set of axes. Okay, so that means you'll have your x-axis and your y-axis. Obviously, this is where you're going to have the origin. So that origin, or O, it refers to that point, which is the intersection of the y-axis and the x-axis. Okay, so the reason for you to notice that O or the origin is because from that point going to the right is the positive side of the x-axis. From that point going to the left is the negative side of the x-axis. Okay, and then from that point again going up is the positive side of the y-axis. Going down is the negative side of the x-axis. Very, very much important, guys. You will notice this shortly. And again, I've drawn the first given graph. Okay, remember guys, I haven't started to answer any question. We're just on the given statement and sketch. So we're, in a way, what we're doing is just to interpret the given information and try to make sense out of that information so that when we start answering the question, we'll be on the same page. So guys, we might spend some time on this part. So what I want you to notice is that you're given two graphs, okay, which is the graph of x, which is equals to 1 over 2 into x plus 5 close squared minus 8, right? And you're given the graph of x, the graph of g, which is half x plus 9 over 2. So that means these two graphs are drawn on that set of axes. Very, very much important, guys. So now let's start to draw the first graph, which is the graph of f. Okay, so obviously you know the graph of f, it's a parabola. So this is how it goes, even though it's drawn already, guys. Even though it's drawn already, you just need to redraw it so that you fully understand what the questions wants you to calculate. And again, you fully understand the approach, if it's going to work or not. That's what helps me in most cases to be able to relate to the questions, because if it's drawn, there are some things which might confuse you because you don't know what motivated the examiner to draw that particular graph or sketch in that way. Okay, but when you try to redraw it, there are some things that you easily notice as you draw the graph. For example, we've already drawn the x-axis. Okay, now that we are done with the x-axis, we draw the first graph. We know a parabola goes with something called the axis of symmetry. Okay, the axis of symmetry is a line that cuts a parabola into two equal pieces. It cuts it right in the middle of those two, that graph. Okay, so obviously at the turning point of a parabola, that's where you have the axis of symmetry. It cuts this graph into two equal halves, okay, or two equal parts. So guys, this is the turning point of that parabola. So that means I can just draw a broken line, which is now my axis of symmetry for that graph. The other thing, guys, which is very, very much important, as soon as you've drawn the given graph, as soon as you've drawn the function, please do make sure to give it a name. Okay, so that line is f. What is f? F is equals to that given equation. So this is the function, guys. This is the graph. This is the equation of that graph of parabola. Okay, very, very important. So guys, can you see the manner in which that graph is given? We know inside the brackets we can easily find the axis of symmetry, or the x value of the axis of symmetry, and this is the turning point of the given graph. So what I'm saying is, you remember this is P and this is Q. I think I've done a lesson previously where I talk into detail about the difference between the two graphs. You've got two formats. This is one of the other format of a parabola. You can also have the other format in the standard form. So with those two different formats, you are able to find different important information. For example, this -8, it's that point there, which is -8, which is the turning point of your parabola or your graph. Okay, so inside the brackets we can be able to find the x-intercept of the axis of symmetry. If you want to know that line, the x value at that point, we can just equate this to 0. So that means it's going to be x, which is plus 5, it's equals to 0. Then you solve for x. That means x is equals to -5. Okay, so that means the equation for that axis of symmetry is x, it's equals to -5. Okay, so what does it mean, guys? It means that point there, it's -5. I'm not sure if you fully understand, guys, but I think you'll be able to notice the importance of this formula or this information as soon as we start with the question. So remember, guys, at this stage, I'm not expecting any of you to be writing all of this information. I'm going to make sure that I make this lesson available online so that you're able to replay this lesson over and over again until you fully understand this lesson. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I've just explained that this information helps us to find the x value or the x-intercept of the axis of symmetry. So in short, or in simple words, I'm just saying that broken line, it cuts or it touches the x-axis at -5. Okay, so it really confirms that this side is the negative side of the x-axis. So that means that point there and that point there, it's on the negative side of the x-axis. For example, if they gave those points some letters, let's say they said A and B there. Already, if you have done a lot of questions related to graphs, you already understand that there might be a question which says calculate the x-intercepts of that graph of f. But because these points are not given any letters, it could be that there's no question which might want us to calculate the x-intercepts. Okay, so guys, I'm not sure if I've actually explained all in relation to the graph of f, but I think for now this should be enough. So remember, guys, the turning point, okay, the turning point of this graph, it's called A. Okay, then you must just write it A. So you know every time when they talk about A, they'll be referring to the turning point. The turning point of what? Of the graph of f. What is the graph of f? What is the equation of the graph of f? So the equation of the graph of f is 1/2 into x plus 5 close squared minus 8. Okay, so anything that has to do with the graph of f, always consult that formula. Okay, it might help you in terms of providing the answers to questions that you might be asked. Guys, again, there's a point there which is referred to as point E. So, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of the points, okay, in terms of the points, that point there, it's E, it's written there. It could be E which is written there. On the statement, there's going to be a confirmation statement which guides you in terms of exactly where that E is. Okay, you'll find that the E refers to that point there. Okay, so when they say E, you shouldn't be looking around this area thinking that, okay, this is where E, so they want you to calculate something at that point. Okay, so we refer to these points of intersections by using letters. Okay, so for example, they can just say maybe point C. Can you see where C is written? C is written there, but that C, you find that it represents the y-intercept of the graph of f. So in short, C, for example, is written there, but C refers to that point where this graph touches the y-axis. Okay, even if it was D, let's say it wasn't C, but let's say it was H, for example, and that H, it's written somewhere there. It could be an error, the typing error. It could be something else, but on the statement, they are going to say H is the y-intercept of the graph of F. Okay, then you already know that, okay, when we talk of H, then we refer to that point. Then you can just say, okay, at that point already I know at that point already I know the x value is 0. If I want to know the y value, I can just substitute into the formula of that function or that graph, which is that one. So wherever you see 0, just place 0. You just place 0, you punch all of this on a calculator, then it will give you the value at that point. Just as an example, guys. Okay, so guys, let's now move to the next graph. But before I do that, let me just remove this so that it doesn't confuse us. So this is the point which is C. Okay, I wanted to label all the points in relation to this graph, or all the points related to the graph of F. And again, just before I forget, there's that point there which is point D, but point D comes as a result of that straight line. That's why at this stage I won't write that D. So should I use a different marking pen or the same marking pen? Okay, let me just use a different marking pen. I hope you'll be able to see. Let me just use the same that I've used there. So guys, remember we're given two functions. This is the first function. We're done with the first function. This is the second function. Okay, so now the second function touches the x-intercept there, and again it touches the y-intercept, the y-axis there. So you just connect those two lines. It might not be a straight line, but I'm sure you fully understand. Okay, so guys, this is the graph of G. Please do write G. Very, very much important, guys. Very, very much important. Okay, this is the graph of G. What is the graph of G? This is the graph of G. Okay, so that means this is the gradient of the graph of G. Can you see it's positive? So that means it's positive half is the graph of G, and then we've got positive 9/2. What is positive 9/2 in decimal? This is 4.5 or 4.5. So that means C, this is where we already know the x value at that point is 0. But because the graph of G cuts the y-axis at that point, and we're given the equation, this is the y-intercept of the graph of G. Okay, so guys, every time when someone says y-intercept or x-intercept, they're simply saying at where that particular graph touches or cuts that y or x axis. Okay, so this is the y-intercept of the graph of G. So in short, it means this is where G cuts the y-axis. So this is where G touches the y-axis, and this is where the graph of G touches the x-axis. Funny enough, we notice that this is where the two graphs actually touches the x-axis. So that means at that point, that graph and this graph touches the y-axis at the same point. So we can use this information to know that, okay, that means that point is 4.5, or that point is 9/2, where x is 0. Why did you have to be aware that this is your origin? It's because it now makes sense that from that point going up is the positive side of the y-axis, okay? And there is the negative side of the x-axis. But that point, it doesn't really matter that much, okay? So guys, there's this point there. which is called D. So what is D, guys? If you can have a look at this graph, you will realize that that point D is where the axis of symmetry and that graph of G intersects, or where they touch each other, or where they are joining, So, guys, that point D, they are saying X of that point is referred to as M, and Y of that point is referred to as N. Okay, so we already know that that line or that point there, we already know that it's -5. So that means our axis of symmetry cuts the x-axis at -5. Okay, so it's more like we already know that M, it's -5. We already know by just interpreting this given information. We already know that that point there is actually -5. So that line cuts the x-axis where the x value is -5. Okay, so guys, what we don't know could be the y value at that point. Okay, that's what we don't know. Obviously, for us to be able to know, we just substitute the x value into the formula for the graph of G. In that way, we'll be able to know the corresponding y value at that point, which would be our N. Okay, so guys, no need to understand anything at this stage, but if you do understand, consider yourself almost there or almost ready for exams. If you don't understand, it's also fine, but for now, please do make sure that at the end of this lesson or at a later stage, you replay this video before starting with the questions. If you get to a stage where you replay it over and over again, you will surely develop questions. Please do ask me those questions. You can just drop me a WhatsApp text, sending a voice note with all of your questions in one voice note. Otherwise, just comment on the comment section and I'll make sure to quickly attend to your questions. So guys, as soon as you've done studying this part, then you can now start with the questions, which is what we're going to do shortly. So as soon as we do the questions, that's when everything is going to make sense, guys. That's when everything is going to make sense. Okay, and again, what matters the most, guys, if you happen to have a chance, I would encourage you to write all of that formula in the standard form. Okay, so the standard form, that's where you just say, for example, it's half, it's f of x, it's equals to, so it's half, it will obviously be all of this, which is x plus 5, x plus 5, and then it's minus 8, then you multiply all of this, it should be half into x squared, that times that should be 10x plus 25 minus 8, and then you just multiply by half, then you sum the like terms, and then from there, that's when you should be able to write it in the standard form. So the standard form, that's where you have y, it's equals to a x squared plus bx plus c. Okay, so if you have it written in the standard form, then you are able to easily refer to both of these equations in case if you need to confirm one of your answers. Okay, for example, guys, I can tell you, if you expand that formula, your a there, you're going to have a positive ax squared. If you don't have a positive ax squared, for example, if you get -1 over 2x squared, then just know that your expansion is wrong, or your equation in the standard form is wrong. Why? Because I know, and I've already done this lesson, guys, where I've indicated that if your graph is like that, okay, that means your a is equals to positive. So that means you've got a smiling graph. Okay, can you see? You've got a smiling graph. That's why your A is positive, right? The opposite is the truth. If your A it's negative, obviously you're going to have a sad graph. That's if your A is negative. Okay, so those are some of the tricks that I use when it comes to this kind of graphs. So now let me not wipe that information, just in case if we need to refer to that information, then I can still have it available there. So, ladies and gentlemen, now we'll be starting with answering the questions. And one thing for sure, we won't waste much of our time on these questions because we've actually done a lot. And I assume you fully understood that part. I tried to make it as simple as possible. And I think somewhere, somehow, if you happen to encounter any challenges, you will reach out to my communication platforms. So guys, let's now start with the first question. The first question says, write down the coordinates of A. I hope you're able to see. Remember what I've told you with regards to the quality. 3 dots, click on quality down there, advanced, and then from there you choose I think it's 480p. So guys, you should be able to read all of this information. 4.2.1, write down the coordinates of A. Guys, we have drawn that graph, we have redrawn that graph, and we know what is A. We have talked much about A. We know A refers to the turning point of that equation. Okay, I mean that graph. So guys, let me just write down the formulas there. We've got the graph of f, the graph of f of x, which is equals to 1 over 2 into x plus 5 close squared minus 8. Okay, and we also have the graph of g, which is equals to what was it? Let me quickly check. It's also 1 over 2 x and then plus 9 over 2. Okay, let me just quickly confirm if I've got it correct. Yes. So guys, 4.2.1. Okay, so the question says write down the coordinates of A, and we obviously know that A, that's where we just need P and Q, because it's the turning point of the graph of parabola, and this is the equation of the turning point of the graph of parabola. So I've just indicated that you just equate that to 0. So in short, for you to calculate P, okay, so you just say x plus 5 and you equate it to 0. Therefore, your x is equals to -5. You move 5 to the other side of the equal sign, and remember at all times it changes a sign, it becomes -5. Okay, so obviously guys, your q is equals to -8. So this is your q. So guys, in short, that formula, it's the standard way of writing that formula. It's y is equals to, I think it should be a into, what is it? It's x minus p close bracket squared plus q. Okay, I'm just not at this stage 100% sure if this is plus or if it's a minus, but it doesn't really matter that much. What matters the most is let's say it's plus p. So that means for you to be able to calculate the x value of the turning point, you just equate all of this to 0. So that means x, let's say x plus p, it's equals to 0. Okay, so in this case our p it's positive 5. That's why it's x, it's equals 2. Then you move your p to the other side of the equal sign, and then it changes sign. It becomes negative what is it, negative 5. Okay, so what if our p there was a negative value? So that means it's x, let's say plus, let's say it was negative 3. Okay, then you just equate it to 0. Then your x, it's equals 2. You just move it to the other side and it becomes positive 3. That's why I'm saying it doesn't really matter in terms of that sign if it's positive or negative, but let's just leave it as positive for the purpose of just making you to understand. So in short, guys, I'm saying whatever number that you are given there, right, just write it in the opposite sign. Then that's your x value of the turning point. That's what I'm saying in short. Okay, so guys, I hope you now understand how to write the coordinates of the turning point when you're given an equation in that form. So that means the coordinates of A, that's where x, it's negative 5. You just write whatever that is given in the opposite sign. So that means if it was a negative maybe 9, then you're just going to say a positive 9, right? So your q, you just take it as it is. Then it's negative 8. Okay, so guys, that means you know that from that origin going down, it's on the negative side of the y-axis, and again on the negative side of the x-axis. Very much important. So that means this is negative 5, this is negative 8. So guys, that's how you solve for question 4.2.1. okay, so where do you score some marks? And again, how many marks is this question allocated? So this question is allocated 2 marks. Okay, so obviously we can just give you 2 marks, but otherwise if you showed those calculations, you might find that you score a mark for just equating that to 0 and solving for the x value. They give you a mark, and again they just give you a mark for indicating that your y value there of the turning point is negative 8. So guys, I hope you fully understand that part, right? So can we now move to question 4.2.2? I think I'm ready. So I'll just wipe all of this. It was just as easy as it is, guys. It shouldn't have taken that long to answer that question. So now let's move to question 4.2.2. Most importantly, it's allocated, let's see, 1 mark. Okay, so guys, especially with the questions related to a parabola, you in most cases you always have that question. You know, in most cases that question it's being asked, where they want you to write down the range of a particular graph. In this case is the graph of f. So write down the range of f. Okay, so guys, when we talk about the range, we are looking at the y-axis. Okay, so let's say we've got that. This is the Cartesian plane, this is the x-axis, and this is the y-axis. We've got 2 graphs. This is the graph, let's say this is the graph of f. Let me just indicate the arrows there. So these arrows, they are basically saying that this graph, it just continues up to infinity. Okay, it just goes down, right? And let's say again, we've got another graph. Let me just draw it like that and say this is the graph of g. Okay, so guys, for you to be able to determine the range, or for you to be able to write the range of a particular graph, you should know the turning point. Please do note this information down. For you to be able to write down the range of a particular graph, you should be able to firstly know the turning point of that particular graph, especially when you talk of a parabola. So let's say the turning point of that graph, it's obviously on the positive side, right? Let's say it's 4. Okay, so obviously the turning point of that graph is on the negative side of the y-axis. It's obviously, let's say, -2. Okay, so a question may be, what is the range of the graph of G? So between these two graphs, which one is the graph of G? This is the graph of G. Okay, so this is the turning point of the graph of G, which is what is it, -2. Okay, so in terms of the range, guys, we are saying the range of the graph of f, it starts from there going up to infinity. Okay, because of this arrows, it means it continues going up, it continues going up, because a page can be that size. We don't have to show it going and heading towards the end of the page. We can just indicate by means of arrows there. Then we know that this graph, it just turns there and then it goes up to infinity. Okay, so that means this graph, the range of that graph, it ranges from y is greater or equals to -2. So in short, guys, what it means is that this graph of G, it starts from -2 along the y-axis going up to infinity. Okay, so that means this graph, it ranges from there. Have you ever seen a wave, guys? A wave, I think in physics there's somewhere where there's a wave like that. Okay, let's say maybe something like that. So guys, if this is let's say if this is 2 and this is -3, the range of this graph is within 2 and -3. This is the range. It doesn't go past that 2. It doesn't go past that -3. It just ranges within. It could be smaller, but maximum it ranges within 2 and -3. Same applies on this graph. It's only that the shapes are different. Can you see that one is just a U? So that means the range of this graph, it starts from there, or it ranges from there going up to infinity. Okay, so what is the graph? I mean, what is the range of the graph of f? Where is the graph of f? This is the graph of f. Okay, so can you see it starts from there going down and up to infinity? Okay, so from there going down. So that means when it goes down, in terms of this sign, you use less than, because it ranges from there and then anything less, it's where is the direction in which this graph it's heading. Okay, so that means it's y, it's less or equals to 4. So in short, we're saying this graph, it can only go up to 4, and then from there it goes down and down up to infinity. So I assume at this stage you are able to see that the range of that graph, you can obviously be able to see, we refer to the y value. Okay, so that's why I'm saying when we talk about the range, at all times we refer to the y value. So in answering that question, guys, in answering question 4.2, that's why it's even allocated the smallest mark. It's allocated 1 mark. That means it's not that much complicated, because this graph is going up. So that means if it's up, then you just use greater than or equals to. If it's down, less than or equals to. Okay, so for a smiling shape, then you just say y is greater or equals to -8. Okay, so we comment on the y-axis of the function. The y value of that graph gives us the range of that particular graph. Okay, so I hope you fully understand this part, guys. So this is how you score your 1 mark. as easy as it is. And again, guys, don't be confused by a graph like this one. A graph like this one, where they tell you that the y-intercept, maybe it's -5. Okay, this is the y-intercept and it's not the turning point. Okay, please do make sure that you notice the difference. Okay, because at some points you might be given the y-intercept and you confuse it with the x, with the y value of the turning point. At all times, please make sure that when you give the range, you refer to the turning point of a particular graph. Okay, very, very much important. You can just note it down so that you don't forget. Okay, so now, guys, let's move to question 4.2.3. Question 4.2.3, and this question, it's allocated 3 marks. Okay, so they say calculate the values of m and n. Guys, we have already answered this question when we're doing our analysis. I'm not sure if you remember. Just quickly going to get this information. If you remember, guys, these are the coordinates of D, and that's what the question wants us to calculate. Even though they didn't say the coordinates of D, they just said the values of m and n. But you already know that m and n refers to the coordinates of D, which is that point. What happens at that point? That's where the x value, it's -5. Obviously, if you want to know the y value, we just substitute into the formula that passes through that point. What is the formula that passes through that point? Is the formula for the graph of G, which is the graph that passes at that point. Okay, so 3 marks, guys. We won't waste time on this one. We know that D, that's where we have the coordinates of m and n. And again, we already know that D, it's -5. Remember, -5 is the x of the is the x value of the axis of symmetry. So that means the axis of symmetry cuts or touches or intercept the x-axis at -5. Okay, they don't really need to write -5 at that point, but from the given information such as the formula or other given information on the statement, you can be able to tell that that point is -5. So guys, we've got the equation of g of x. This is what we're going to use in order to assist us to write all the coordinates. So we know it's 1/2x plus 9/2. Ladies and gentlemen, in case if you are not confident with the fractions, I know there are some of you who don't like working with the functions, but if you can convert this to a decimal, and when you convert it to a decimal, it won't need you to round off. Then, for the sake of getting the calculations correct, you can just write it as 0.5x. I'm not sure what's happening with my marking pen, but you can just write it as 0.54, because if you punch 1/2 in a calculator, is 0.5. Okay, and then you just add, this is 4.5. Okay, 9/2, it's 4.5. So now what are we trying to do, guys? In place of x, we just substitute -5. Why? Because we want to know the y value where x it's -5. So that means you have 0.5 into -5, you plus 4.5, which is equals to, you just punch all of this on a calculator, and then you have 0.5 into -5 plus 4.5, it's equals to, I'm not sure what happened there, then it's 2. So that means that point there, the y value is 2. Okay, so that means the coordinates of D, it's where the x value, or m, it's equals to -5, and n, it's equals to 2. Okay, so this is how you answer this question. Let me just quickly check how many marks is this question allocated. So this question is allocated 3 marks. Okay, so let's just try to see exactly where we score those marks. So what I'm thinking is they're just going to give you a mark for, let's see, they will give you a mark for you to be able to know that the m, or that value there, it's equals to -5. I'm not sure if you guys remember how you get that value of -5. Guys, I've just indicated that it's x plus 5. You just equate it to 0, right? And then from there, your x is equals to -5. So this is a step where you get a mark. Okay, so the next mark comes from you substituting into the equation. So that means for correct substitution, you get a mark. This is where you substituted your your -5, right? So that's where you score a mark. And again, they give you a mark for your final answer. So I assume you fully understand how to answer this question, and again, you understand where you score some marks. So now let's move to the next question. Guys, if you've got a glass of water, just make sure that you just drink some water. Guys, now let's move to question 4. What is it? It's 4.2.4, right? So this is the question that we'll be doing. Guys, I hope from the previous question, it will just indicate, you will just say m is equals to -5, n is equals to 2. Okay, so that means that point, how do I do it? That point, okay, let me just say that point there, it's -5, and that point somewhere there, it's 2. Okay, that point there, and obviously that point there, it's -5. But what matters the most is that m is -5, n is 2. So now let's move to the next question. And the question says, calculate the area of O, C, D, and E. And this question is allocated 3 marks. Very, very, very much interesting question, guys. So when you're confronted with this kind of questions, what you would do is to try and redraw the points where they want you to calculate the area. We know it's that point. This is the origin, and then they said C, and then they said D, which is somewhere there, and they said E, which is somewhere there. So this is the area of a shape that they want you to calculate. If you are good in shapes, if you know what type of a shape is that, you will obviously be able to write the formula. This is a trapezium, guys. So area of a trapezium, we know it's half that height plus that height. Let's say length 1 plus length 2 multiplied by breadth. Okay, so this is how you write the formula for the area of a trapezium, and obviously you can just name them. This is O, this is C, this is D, this is E. In most cases, guys, we use information from the previous questions to assist us to tackle the upcoming questions. So remember, guys, from O up to C, what is the length? So that means at that point, we already know that is the y-intercept of both of these graphs. But this graph, because it's not in the standard form of ax squared plus bx plus c, then won't be able to use the information on the graph of f to be able to know exactly what is the y-intercept. But we can use this formula or the equation of G to know that at that point, that's where you've got your x as 0 and again your y as 9 over 2 or 4.5. So let's just say 9 over 2 so that you are able to know where that 9 over 2 comes from. Okay, so it comes from that formula. So guys, that means from there to there it's a 9 over 2, otherwise which is 4.5. If you punch on a calculator 9 divided by 2 in decimal, it should give you 4.5. Okay, so what is from there to there? We just calculated from the previous question. We know from there to there it's equals to 2. So the previous question helped us to know or helped us to be able to tackle this question. So we know from there, from E to D, it's equals to 2. Okay, so what is the length from there to there? Obviously, guys, it's 5 units. It's 5 units. Why? Because from the origin up to there, it's -5. How did we know? If you can start from the start of this lesson, you will be able to realize that that point is -5, and again you'll be able to know how we concluded to say that point is -5. Okay, so in terms of the lengths, we know we don't talk about negatives, we just need the value. So that means from there to there it's equals to 5. So guys, can you now see that we're able to calculate that area? This is 1 over 2 into what is the first length. It could be one of these. It doesn't really matter if you start with that length or this length. So let's just say it's 2 plus 4.5 or 9 over 2, remember? And then you multiply by 5. Okay, then you just punch all of this on a calculator and see what you get. So it's 1 over 2 into 2 plus 9 over 2, remember, which is 4.5. Then you multiply by 5 and you get an answer which is let's see, it's 64. You can just write it firstly in what is it, in fraction form. It's 65 over 4. In decimal, it's the same as, let's see, my calculator, it's actually dying. Let me see. In decimal form, okay, it's equals to what is it, 16.25 units. You can just say units squared, because this is the area. We know that the area, it's in what is it, the area is written in squared, in units squared. So in most cases in maths, they don't refer to the lengths or distances as meters or millimeters, centimeters or kilometers. So that's why in most cases we just use the word units. So guys, this is how you calculate the area of that shape. A very, very good question may be asked, is this the only way in which we can calculate the area? So for someone who would ask this kind of a question, is because they know already that this is possibly not the only way to answer that question. So guys, there are many ways to kill a cat. Okay, so the other one can just separate that and say, okay, I'm going to first calculate the area of that what is it, rectangle. So let's say they're going to say A is equals to length times breadth. Okay, so length times breadth plus the area of that triangle, which is half length times breadth. Okay, so obviously your length there is 5, and again your height there it's, or your breadth, it's 2, plus 1 over 2 into L, What is your L? There is your L, which is 5, okay? And then what is your breadth? So that means your breadth is from there up to there, okay? Which is 4,5 minus 2, which means is 2.5. So that means from there to there is 2, from there to there is 2.5. That's why it's 4.5 as the total length. So that means there you have 2.5. So you can just try to punch all of this and tell me if you get a 16.25 units squared. Okay, you can just comment in the comment section if you got the same answer, but I think this could be another possible way in which you can calculate the area of that shape. Okay, obviously in terms of marks, guys, I can just give you a mark for the formula. I can give you a mark for correct substitution. Let's just quickly check this question. How many marks? I think it's 3 marks. Yeah, it's allocated 3 marks. Then I can give you a mark for final answer. So I think even if you just said 16.25, they were still going to give you a mark. But for you to show that you come from good hands, you can just write units squared, because you know the area is measured in units squared. So guys, I think we can now move to the next question. So this is where you can just quickly have a glass of water as we move to the next question. So guys, the next question is 4.2.5, and this question is allocated how many marks? It's 2 marks, so that means it's not that much complicated. So in most cases, guys, you are actually rewarded marks for your thinking, because they assume you already know how to do the calculations, because they taught you that in the previous grades. So when you get to grade 11, when you get to grade 12, also at tertiary level, they are not testing you on how to perform the calculations, but instead they are testing your thinking capacity together with your understanding of the given information. Okay, so 4.2.5, determine the equation of the inverse of G. The inverse of G in the form of Y, it's equals to that. At all times, guys, before I even understood what is meant by the inverse, I always knew that for a question which looks similar to this one, where they want you to determine the equation, and it has G to the power -1, not necessarily G, it could be F, but something to the power -1, and from there they said in the form, then I know this is that situation where they want you on the graph of G. Remember, G to the power -1, okay? So they want you on this graph of G to just swap those variables or the quantities. Remember, the graph of G is Y, it's equals to 1 over 2x plus 9 over 2, right? So when they want you to calculate the inverse, they're simply saying swap the x and the y. So in place of y, write x. In place of x, write y. And then from there, write that equation in the form of y. So in short, guys, they're saying write x equated to, anything else remains the same, okay? You just swap this x and y. And then from there, what they want you to do is to then write it in the form of y is equals to something, okay? So let's see. It's more like you're making a y the subject of the formula, okay? You will obviously move this to the other side. Then it means it's x, it's already there. Then this will be minus 9 over 2, which is equals to a 1 over 2y. Okay, guys, I think I'm running out of an ink. I might as well request for a donation, but it's unfortunate we're in the middle of a lesson, then I'll need to go and get a new marking pen. But otherwise, let's just try to finish off using the same marking pen. As long as you're able to see, and again, if you're able to hear clearly, then we're 100%. So guys, remember we're trying to make y the subject of the formula. Okay, so now for us to remove that half, we can just multiply every term by 2, because we know this 2 is going to cancel. Okay, so now if we multiply each term by 2, we know then we remain with y, and you multiply this by 2, you also multiply that by 2, so these 2 they cancel, then you have 9 minus 2 times x, then it becomes 2x. Okay, so that means y is equals to 2x minus 9. What is this, guys? This is the inverse of the graph of g. So the moment they say f negative 1, that means it's the inverse, guys. What does the inverse mean? You just swap the x and the y. So in place of x, you write y. In place of y, you write x. Okay. Then if the question wants to be specific, that's when they are going to say write it in the form of y is equals to something. Okay, so this question is allocated 2 marks. You obviously realize that they are going to give you 1 mark for just swapping. Okay, and the last mark will obviously come from your final answer. So guys, this is how you answer this question. So that means g inverse, okay, g inverse it's equals to 2x minus 9. Okay, so that is g of x. Let me just write it in full there. That is g of x. That is the inverse of that graph of g. Okay, so don't be confused when they write g and again they say to the positive negative 1. So that means everywhere where you see g to the exponent negative 1x, they are talking about that equation. When they say g, they are talking about this equation. So now that means you've got 2 equations of g, which is this one is the original and that one is the inverse. Okay, so don't be confused by that. So I assume you fully understand how to solve this question 4.2.5. So now let's get to the last question. I know it's been a very long lesson, but I hope it was worth it, guys. So let's now move to the last question, which is allocated 4 marks. So they're saying 4.2.6, if h of x is equals to g to the exponent negative 1, can you see this is the inverse plus k, it's a tangent to f, determine the coordinates of the point of contact between h and f. Now this question is allocated 4 marks. So what matters the most out of this question, guys, you should be able to know exactly what they want you to calculate. Okay, regardless of this information being given to you, this is not really the question. They are just saying if h of x is equals to that inverse plus k, it's a tangent to f, determine the coordinates of the point of contact between h and f. So what they want is the point of contact between h and f. And you know in most cases that where the graphs come into contact, that's where they are equal. For example, that point there, that's where that graph comes into contact with that graph. So that means at that point, these 2 graphs are equal. So again, at that point, that's where that graph and this graph come into contact. And again, at that point, it means they've got equal values. Okay, so guys, from what I've just explained to you, this is 4.2.6. okay, and this question is allocated 4 marks, right? So from what I've just explained, guys, that means f of x is equals to h of x. Why am I equating those two? I've just explained that this is the point of contact between these two graphs. So at that point where they want us to determine the coordinates, that's where these two graphs are equal. That's why I equate these two graphs. Okay, so now what is the equation of the graph of f? Let's now write the equation of the graph of f. This is the equation of the graph of f, you remember. So let's just expand that equation, then we'll get to this one. So we know that f of x is equals to half into x plus 5 squared minus 8. So we need to now write it in the standard form. Why? Because we're going to equate it to that equation, and from there we're going to solve for x. As soon as we have calculated the value of x, we are now going to substitute it into the original equation, and then we'll be able to calculate the corresponding y value. So those will be the coordinates where these two graphs are equal, or where they come into contact. Okay, so guys, you can still right away equate these two equations, but then I just want to make it easy by firstly expanding that equation. Let me expand. As soon as we are done, that's when you'll be able to notice why I started with expansion. So that means you've got 1 over 2 into, I might as well just use a red pen because you can see those two are running out of ink, and I just want to quickly finish off this question. So I'll start a new question with tomorrow when we do another live lesson. I'll start with a new marking pen. So guys, what is f of x? It's equals to 1 over 2 into x plus 5, x plus 5 minus 8. Can you see what I did? Because of that 2, I made 2 of these. Okay, so let's now expand. You still have 5. You just multiply these 2. This is x times x. It's x squared. We know x times x is 5x. 5x times x is 5x. Then it becomes 10x. Okay, this times that obviously is 25. Okay, minus 8. So now let's multiply everything by half. So that means we have half x squared. This times this, half of 10 is 5x. Half of 25, you can just write it as 25 over 2, and then you can subtract 8. Okay, so you are remaining with half x squared plus 5x, 25 minus 25 over 2 minus 8, it's equals 2 plus 9 over 2. Okay, hope you're able to I hope you're able to see that. Can you see when you write this thing in the standard form, guys? This is your y value, and this is a positive a. So I've got a confirmation that this could be correct because my a is positive. I've got a smiling shape, and again my y value is 9 over 2. It has to be 9 over 2 because that point is where these two graphs intersect. Okay, so at that point where these two graphs intersect, they must have the same y value. There is the y value of the graph of G, and when you write this in that standard form of y is equals to ax squared plus bx plus c, we know c refers to the y intercept. That's why I was saying if this equation is given in that form, and for some reason they ask you to calculate or to give the range of the graph, don't use this value of c, because the value of c only refers to the y-intercept. That means you must know the x-intercepts of that graph. You add them together, you divide by 2, you get the axis of symmetry. You use that axis of symmetry to substitute in that equation to get the y value, then that y value is the turning point. Then you can say y is greater or equals to that y value. Then you know that's how you calculate the range, or that's how you give the range of a function. So guys, I've just expanded that equation. Now the question is, what is the graph of what is the equation for the graph of h of x? Okay, so this is where you refer to the question, guys. The question said, if h of x is equals to the inverse of g plus k. So that means I know what is the inverse of g. This is the inverse of g. So that means h of x is equals to, what is the inverse of g? We know it's 2x minus 9. Okay, but remember, they say h of x is equals to the inverse of g. Let me just do this so that you're able to see. They say h of x is equals to the inverse of g plus k. Okay, so that means we have to add k there. All right, I hope you're able to understand. So that means now I can equate these two equations. So that means this is the equation of f of x, and this is equation of h. So I can just take these two equations and equate them. So that means you've got a half x squared plus 5x plus 9 over 2 is equals to 2x minus 9 plus k. Okay, so guys, I can just take everything on the right, move it to the left, and equate it to 0. Okay, so that means I've got half x squared, obviously 5 minus 2, because I'm moving it to the other side, then it changes the sign, it becomes minus 2, then it's 5 minus 2, which is 3x. Okay, hope you agree with me on that one. And again, as soon as you've done that part, then that means you've got 9 over 2, where you add 9, because you move 9 to the other side and it changes a sign. Then 9 over 2 plus 9, it's equals to 27 over 2. So that means this is plus 27 over 2. Remember, you've got a k that you move to the other side, it changes the sign and it becomes a negative k, then you equate it to 0. Okay, so because we're dealing with a quadratic equation, to find the x value, we can use this formula. I'm not sure if you remember this formula, which is x is equals to negative b over 2a. Okay, so what is our b? From that equation, obviously our b is 3. Okay, so that means it's negative 3 over 2. Our a, obviously, it's half, so it's a positive half. Then you punch all of this on a calculator, so that means x, it's equals to, on your calculator you can just say fraction button, let's see, fraction button, then negative, let's see, negative b is 3, so it's negative 3 over 2 into half, it's equals to negative 3. Okay, so that means the x value, it's negative 3. Then with regards to the y value, you can just substitute in one of these original formulas. Obviously, we can use the graph of f, because this graph of h, it has a k, whereas we don't know what is the value of k. So we can just substitute it into that original formula and say y will be 1 over 2 into, in place of x we substitute minus 3, then plus 5 close squared minus 8. Okay, then the value that we get, we know it's the y value, I mean the x value, which is negative 3. Let's check what is the y value. So it's half into negative 3 plus 5 close squared minus 8. which is equals to -6. Okay, so this is how you answer this question where they want you to give to determine the coordinates of the point of contact between H and F. Okay, so guys, this is how you score your 4 marks. So obviously they would give you a mark for equating these two equations, whether you equate them there or you equate them there, you get, this is where they give you a mark. Okay, so as soon as you've got your first mark, let's check where they'll give you your second mark. Obviously they can give you your second mark by calculating the x value. Where is the x value? The x value, we know we calculated it to be 3. Then they can give you a mark there. And again, obviously you must get a mark for calculating the y value. Okay, and again, I think for just writing those coordinates, they can just give you the 4th mark there. But obviously, you know, if you have done everything correctly, they should just find you exactly where to give you a mark. So guys, this is how you answer this question, and I hope you enjoy it. It's been a very long lesson. Can feel it as well that I'm a bit tired. So after this lesson, I'm going to prepare for tomorrow's lesson. I hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy, please give it a thumb, just like this video. And again, if you've got any comments, you can just comment in the comment section. Otherwise, guys, thanks very much for joining. My name is Desmond, and I'm out.